And thank you so much for joining us for the big interview series. Just wondering if you could give yourself a little introduction in terms of your background, and then we can just explore, some of the key things on your agenda.
Thanks, Rosie. It's really nice of you to have invited me to contribute. So yeah, I'm Nebel Crowhurst, and I've actually just started a new role in a new organisation. So I'm Vice President of People at a company called Inter University Partnerships. And I joined just 6 weeks ago, so all very fresh, new ideas, learning lots of things about a new business. Prior to that, I spent the last 2.5 years with a global pharma company called Roche. And then before that, worked in retail, so headed up our talent function and people experience function for River Island. And then before then, was part of the Virgin family, so part of the travel industry and the exciting and fast-paced world of travel and airlines. So quite a broad mix of organisations and different industries, and lots of different roles along the way in the HR space.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much. And I'd love to ask a question around, where your real passions lie in HR, Nebel.
So I think for me, the biggest area of passion very much is around employee experience overall. So it's really important from a HR perspective that we get our kind of processes and core fundamentals in order, and we stick within the sort of compliance and legalities of what we do within HR. But once we've got those things in order, really what we should be focusing on is the overall experience for every employee within our workplace, to enable people to thrive, to do the best that they can do, to then in turn have an impact on the business. And that employee life cycle piece tends to be what historically I've kind of built people strategies around. So really focusing on every stage of the life cycle, what are the key initiatives that you can put into practice that make a true difference to how people feel when they show up at work. Because my view is how people feel and the way in which they can have a sense of belonging and also know that they're making a real difference and adding value to a business it is really, really important to the way in which we work. So certainly that employee experience piece for me is the sort of linchpin to how we build what we deliver from a people point of view into an organisation and how we make a real difference.
Thank you. And so are there any specific examples around initiatives you've rolled out specific to that employee experience piece, either at Roche or at River Island, that you'd like to reference?
It is, although you look at the life cycle, and that's kind of this sort of from the point of employee branding, attraction, selection, onboarding, developing people, rewarding and acknowledging performance, all the way around to when someone decides to leave an organisation, how you treat somebody at that point in their experience with the company. Really at the heart and the core of that also needs to sit really strong leadership, a really clear view of the culture of the organisation, and really strong communications. So the life cycle piece is really important, but those central kind of pieces are really, really vital. So from a leadership point of view, there's a lot of work that I've done in previous organisations where we've focused on what are the kinds of leadership behaviours that we want to role model and display in the organisation that fits with the ambition around the culture and what we're trying to strive to achieve. And that then enables the life cycle pieces to land really well, because you've got a much stronger position on the importance of what HR brings to the table in an organisation. And I guess connected to that then is another area of passion for me, which is about Agile in the workplace. And so the last 2 organisations I've worked in, both River Island and Roche, I've been very lucky that the organisation itself has got a passion around what does working in an Agile way mean to the business, and allowing HR to really play a key role in bringing that to life. And actually one of the really great things about joining Into is that there's also an ambition to be able to bring Agile ways of working into the business. So my hope is that, having learned through experience and testing and trialing things in 2 other very different organisations, there are some things that I can bring into. But implementing an Agile transformation across an organisation is not a small undertaking, but it's a really fantastic initiative that enables work to be done more effectively, but also drives a culture of autonomy, self-organized teams, and people feeling really empowered in the work that they do.
Yeah, that's interesting. And how long does it actually take to introduce that to an organization who might not be working in an agile way currently?
Or
how long is a piece of string?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. It's exactly that. It depends on the context of the organisation, and it depends on your starting point, I think, and whether your starting point is an organisation that's already got quite kind of forward-thinking approaches to leadership, or whether you're in an environment where your starting point is you've got quite a lot of perhaps traditional hierarchy in terms of the way in which you work. And so sometimes there's a lot of focus that needs to be done in that space before you can move into really implementing new ways of working that enable people to own decisions in a way that is not traditionally hierarchical. And actually, it's a never it never truly ends. It's one of those things where if you're going to embark on working in an agile way, there shouldn't necessarily be a defined start point and an end point. There needs to be some clear ambition around what the business wants to achieve, and you need to work towards that. But even when you're working towards that, the vision then can be pushed out even further to evolve it even more so. It's a little bit like onboarding. I always find that HR teams often have onboarding as their as something that's an initiative that needs to be improved, and it's seen to be a sort of standalone project, but actually you should never stop evolving and improving onboarding. It constantly needs to be looked at and improved, and I think rolling out agile transformations is similar. That said, from experience, to truly bring to life agile ways of working and methodologies and mindsets with an organisation, you do need a good year to 18 months to really shift the culture.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I suppose with the experience we've all had over the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic, you know, that onboarding piece has really pivoted and changed, because so many people were onboarded completely virtually and started new jobs. So I'm sure that was, you know, challenging times for a lot of HR practitioners.
Yeah, it kind of, I guess, the onboarding piece and working in the last few years with what's been going on, I think that in itself poses what comes next as a question mark from a HR point of view, from a workplace environment perspective. You know, there's so many conversations taking place within organisations, within HR networks of, you know, what does the world of work look like right now, and how's it going to look in the future, and what does hybrid working really mean, and, you know, what level of flexibility do we go towards. And I think part of that is, how do we make sure we've got the right infrastructure in our organisations to support the flexibility? But I think there's also a piece around employee demands increasing and their expectations growing around how they feel they should be able to work, and the autonomy that they perhaps want to have around where they work, when they work, and that level of flexibility. So that's going to be a challenging space to navigate, I think, over the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. That evolution of the workforce, and you know, how is that going to change, you know, globally, really, and the ways of working. So what other sort of trends do you sort of foresee for HR in the coming sort of 12 to 18 months, Nebel?
Yeah, so I think the way of working piece is a massive one. And the working environment element, and, you know, really understanding what flexibility looks like. I think the other piece that's really challenging for us right now, and again, I'm sure it's on a lot of HRD's agendas, is inflation, and what that looks like from a pay strategy point of view. So I think we're at a point where, you know, it's almost impossible for organisations to deliver pay increases that match inflation like for like. So how do we work more creatively around total reward? What are the other things that we can bring into organisations to bolster what people have from a benefits perspective alongside pay, and help people to take advantage of different things that enable us to, you know, make our pay go as far as it possibly can do in what is quite a challenging time financially for every person, you know, up and down the country. It's a challenge for everybody. So I think that piece is an interesting space that we need to be focusing on. And then it goes back to my point earlier around, how do we really make sure that overall employee experience is meeting the needs of the different types of people you've got within a business in a new world of work compared to where we were at 2 years ago. And it feels like we almost all want to know the answers immediately, but actually we've spent 2 years getting to where we are today. It's a long time for stuff to have happened. So we're not going to be able to fix this in a matter of weeks and months. We're probably going to spend the next 2 or 3 years taking the learnings of the last 2 years to get us to a place where it feels like we're now in this sort of new world and things are working really well. I think we have to be comfortable with experimenting right now, which links back into, I suppose, my philosophy around Agile. We're going to need to test and trial things right now to see what works and what doesn't, and be okay with maybe making some bad moves. We might make some wrong decisions, but that's okay if we can learn from that and continue to evolve and be comfortable with sort of testing and learning and failing along the way, then that's fine. But I think what's really important alongside that is really listening to employees. So truly having mechanisms to enable employee voice so that you can have a clear understanding of what the wants and the needs are from people, and finding ways to enable that to work in an organisation where you've got a good balance between what the organisation needs and what the employees need.
And is that mostly delivered through employee engagement surveys, or what vehicles can you use when you've got such a diverse workforce, and in terms of age and location, and what's important to that individual for that particular point in their life, especially you harking back to what you were saying around total reward and pay, and the cost of living and inflation. So is it best to address that through employee engagement surveys, or have you used successfully other sort of forms of communication and gathering that data previously?
I actually think it's a blend, and I suppose if you think about what you just asked me, which is people are all different, we need to make sure that if we're going to encourage employee voice, the mediums in which we use are also different, because for one person they might find writing something down in a survey is the most comfortable way for them. For some people, they might want to be able to have a dialogue or a conversation with someone that makes them feel like they're heard. So engagement surveys play a role. I think we need to get smarter at more regular engagement surveys. So absolutely moving away from the cumbersome yearly engagement survey and really focusing on the sort of temperature check pulse surveys that give you a snapshot of what's going on at any given time. But I think also having forums in which people can actually access you and have a conversation. So again, some people might want to do that with a line manager or somebody in the business, and some people might want to do that with you in HR. So one of the things that I used to regularly do at Roche was have just an open forum. So once a month, once every couple of months, I would run a session called What's Brewing, and that would be a time for people to come and just share their views, grab a brew. It would give me a chance to understand what's going on in the business, and just encourage people to come and share views, ideas, suggestions, and it would give me some really rich insights to understand what's going on. I think HR needs to have a good mix of people, data and analytics, which I suppose is where your engagement survey can be really useful, but also you need a real feel and a sense of what's going on in the business. And unless you're in touch and connected to people in the business, you can't do that. So it's really important that you find those moments to be able to have real conversations with employees across the organisation. So I see it as a mix, enabling people to feel as comfortable as they can do to share their thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, and just we link that back to that onboarding employee experience piece. When you have a new employee joining the organisation, it's almost that time to get their ideas and input in terms of, well, this was brilliant, but maybe in the future you could incorporate this, and just to get fresh ideas from their previous organisations.
Feedback all the time, and sometimes it's not easy to hear, especially when you're if you're trying your absolute best and some of the feedback is not as favourable as you might want to hear. But that's so important. There's no point burying your head in the sand and thinking we're doing a great job, and if someone doesn't like it, well, that's just tough. Actually, continually strive to improve, listen to what people are saying. It's the people in the organisation that are the ones that are experiencing and feeling what's going on, and you can sometimes get a little bit separated from that in HR, because you're sort of scurrying around doing what you need to do from a sort of policy and process perspective. But that's all fine and well, but unless you're in touch with people in the business, it's really hard to truly meet their needs and meet their expectations.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Oh gosh, Nebel, we could speak for hours, but were there any other particular trends or sort of nuggets of wisdom that you would like to share in the sort of remaining few minutes we have this morning?
I guess one of the other things that I spot quite regularly in business is people that are questioning their own ability a bit, and this whole imposter syndrome subject seems to be coming up a heck of a lot. And I do wonder, is that more prevalent now because we are encouraging people to be more open and honest with how they feel, and that sort of true sort of authentic self in the workplace? Or has some of that also been triggered by the fact that for the last 2 years, many people have been working in kind of isolation at home on their own and not having the level of interaction that they might have had previously? And I suppose one of the things that I feel is really important is working with people and supporting them to have that level of confidence to succeed in their careers and know where to go for support, whether that be coaching, mentoring, career development, that kind of thing. And I do question whether that's something that's maybe not been as prioritized in the last few years, because we've been in this reactive state. We've been trying to cope. We've all been trying to cope from a personal point of view, from a professional point of view, from a business perspective. We've all just been trying to cope. So I think now is a really good time to really focus on how to enable people to truly thrive in the work that they do, giving them the tools and the ability to really have the space to be clear on their career aspirations, and organisations being really open to having those conversations. And one of the small things that I do to try and give people some small nuggets of wisdom and kind of inspiration is I write a blog that's called Dream Big, Believe Bigger, and it's just short stories of things that I've experienced and things that I've come across that I hope when people read, they think, oh, okay, yeah, I can do this. I can achieve what I'm hoping to achieve, because sometimes it's tough going. So yeah, I think that's one of the other things that we need to focus on. How do we get to a place where people are truly thriving in the work that they're doing?
And how often do you publish that vlog, Nebel?
Oh, it's very sporadic.
Is it? Oh, okay.
It tends to be when something comes up and I think, oh, that's an interesting perspective on the world, and I create it into a small story, and I'll just pop it on my page, and then I share it on Twitter and LinkedIn. So yeah, it's very much in the moment, from the heart, rather than being overly thought out, because I've got my day job. But
yeah, absolutely.
Something I like to do alongside it, in the hope that for somebody it might just give them a little morale boost, or an opportunity to have greater kind of confidence in themselves.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, thank you so much for your time today, and wishing you all the best in your new role at Into. And yes, we'll hopefully catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Rosie. Thank you.